Welcome to the special council meeting, January 25th, 2021. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. Welcome Steve Howard, MLA for the area. Welcome, Mr. MLA. And we have our CAO, Rob Philpott, with us tonight. We have Colin McLean from the Journal Pioneer. Got a new seat tonight, I see over here. And we have members of the public. Welcome, everybody. And also our viewers on YouTube. We're live on YouTube, so welcome to all the viewers. And there are other members of the media, I understand, we're going to be following on YouTube. And also we have Mr. Clinton from the provincial government staff. Welcome. And we have our director, Aaron McDonald, the engineer from Tech Services, and Linda Stevenson, I believe, with the mask on, yes. And who? And Brian, yeah, I'm getting to Brian here. Brian Harlick is on the controls here for, and everything is being recorded. And so we'll continue on. Is there, we'll call the meeting to order, and is there a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Ramsey and seconded by Councillor Drawn. Any questions? All in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary nay. Carried. Okay, the first meeting at this point, we'll turn it over to the Chair of the Planning Board, Councillor Brian McFeely, and I believe it's on 205 Lavergy Avenue. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome, folks. So, public meeting number 1, 205 Lavergy Avenue, official plan and zoning amendment. The background to the application. An application was received from PEI Housing Corporation for 205 Lavergy Avenue, PID number 322008. The purpose of the official plan and zoning amendment is to allow an apartment building on the proposed R4 zone as follows. Proposed official plan amendment. Change the future land use map from institutional to residential. Proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Change the zoning from institutional 1 zone to high density residential R2 zone, and the subject property is shown on the accompanying map, Your Worship.
It's on the screens and
on the screens
chambers
as well, yes. The application was advertised in the January 6th edition of The Guardian, and letters were mailed to property owners within 60 meters or 200 feet of the subject properties. The institutional 1 zone, the current zoning, the purpose of this zone is to accommodate institutional buildings for education, health, government, public safety, recreation, culture, and religion. Permitted uses, subject to bylaw requirement. The zone 1 permitted uses, institutional, cemetery, place of worship, child care facility, small, medium, and large, offices, government offices, hospital, public library, museum and gallery, college, university, cultural interpretive center, community center, school premises, and accessory buildings. Residential permitted uses, nursing care facilities, community care and nursing homes, and social service agency. Discretionary uses, subject to council approval. The Zone 1 discretionary uses, institutional, a jail, a correction center, utility facility, research / laboratory facility, emergency services, solar energy collector facility, energy collector system, emergency service facility. High density residential R4 zone, the proposed zoning. The purpose of this zone is to provide for high density housing in the form of apartments, as well as housing in the form of single family, semi-detached, duplex dwellings, row house, townhouse, and other compatible uses. Permitted uses subject to bylaw requirements. The R4 zone permitted uses, single family dwelling, assisted living, row house, semi-detached dwelling, duplex dwelling, townhouse, apartment building, group home, nursing care facility, community care and nursing home, boarding house, child care facility, medium, social service agency, accessory building, and rooming house. Discretionary uses subject to council approval. The R4 zone include tourism establishment, tourist home, and inn. Conditional uses subject to a developmental approval. The R4 zone conditional uses include a home-based business, tourism establishment, bed and breakfast and vacation rental properties, and secondary suites. So this is the point in time in the meeting where we open the floor up to comments. First of all, we would invite the representative from PEI Housing Corporation, Cody Clinton, if he wishes to make some comments. Cody here? Oh, there you are. So when you come to the mic here, please, Cody, if you would please state your name and your address and who you're representing for the public record. Thank you.
Am I okay to? Thank you. My name is Cody Clinton. I work for the Provincial Department of Social Development and Housing to represent the PEI Housing Corporation. So the PEI Housing Corporation is a crown corp of the department. We're responsible for social housing across the province. We would like to, we've requested to rezone the proposed property in order to build family housing on the proposed property. So we're looking at 32 family units that the building, we've engaged an architect, Sable Arc, to design the building. The design hasn't been completed yet, but it's our intention to create social family units for the proposed property. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wait there.
Just
Yeah.
one sec, please, Cody. If council have any questions of Cody, we could. Councillor Ramsey.
And I just have one question, Cody, regarding 32 units, but like 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Do you have any idea on that type of information?
We haven't have a firm unit count yet. It's still up to the design, but it will be a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms.
Mix of 2 and 3, and is it all affordable housing then? It's all social
yes,
housing?
Yes, the
and,
entire building will be clients under our social housing, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just,
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, one here.
Councillor
Oh, sorry,
Durant.
Councillor Durant.
Councillor Durant.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. I guess just wondering, the area surrounding is, seniors, and is this to be accessible to? Just more of a curiosity.
There will be accessible units in the building, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was all I have. Just wanted to.
Just a couple of questions there through you, Mr. Chairman. How many floors?
4.
Stories? How many stories?
4, I believe.
4 stories?
Yeah.
Similar to the one up at the Somerset Manor?
On Frank Malice Drive?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it's approved by council, when is the plan to start?
I believe we would start this fall. So we have engaged an architect, but it is preliminary. So they would need a few months to finalize the design of the building, and then we would look to tender the construction. So likely we'd be aiming for a fall start date.
So this building, my final question, Mr. Chairman, would this building take the whole lot, or is there room for others after that?
No, I think as part of the request of Sable Arc, we did engage kind of to optimize the property. So we can fit 2 buildings on the property. So I think there is, on that site plan, there is plans, or the ability to do a second building. But at this point, we just have the budget to do the 1 right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions of council? Okay. Thank you
Great.
very much, Mr. Clinton.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. There may be other questions here as we proceed.
Mr. Clinton's dad, Mr. Chairman, sat around the municipal chambers for a long time in Surrey as mayor. I've known Gussie for many years.
There we go. There's a connection.
He was a good football player too, this guy, I hear.
I've got the shoulders for it.
I can relate to that. So this is the point in time in the meeting where we open the floor to the public. If there's any public comment regarding the applicant, and this is the opportunity in the process for public input. So we would certainly encourage anyone who is here that
Councillor McFeely, I think we have another gentleman from the province. Is that? Were you wanting to?
the representative has described to us was Mr. Clinton that would speak. So,
Okay, what, if he wanted to say a few words, would
Well-
that be, he came to do that, so.
well, you're certainly welcome to.
Yeah.
We were told the representative from the province would be Mr. Clinton.
Maybe they crossed their wires, but he came all the way here, so we should listen to him.
Good evening, Your Worship, councilors, members of the public. My name is Kevin Kennedy. I'm project lead with Transportation, Infrastructure, and Energy. We are working with the Department of Social Development and Housing on redevelopment of the former Somerset Manor site. Treasury Board at present has approved us to issue an RFP for consultant services, and as Cody mentioned, we have engaged Sable Arc and their team. They put together a team to look at this proposal for a 32-unit family housing complex. I could probably offer a little bit more information that Cody didn't have in terms of the unit mix. The RFP requested for 13 3-bedrooms, 13 2-bedrooms, 6 1-bedrooms, and 7 accessible units. So those are what we're looking at as it related to the RFP for the design. We're in the very preliminary phases right at the moment. We've got a space summary plan that has been approved by our client at Housing, and we are in the early planning phases of the floor plan, building elevations, that sort of thing. Siting the building, you have a sketch there now that indicates their preference in terms of where on the site to place that. We didn't confine our consultant to 3 stories or 4 stories. We just said multi-story, and some of that may be determined by the design as we move forward. Our intent is to have the project include all the required site work, built-in infrastructure, storm water management plan, parking, and we really want this building to be, we're working towards a net zero, so we want this to be a project that we can bring other clients in to have a look at what we've done to try to mitigate the energy consumption of the facility.
Any questions for Mr. Kennedy?
I just have a quick question, Kevin. You said 13 3-bedroom, 13 2-bedroom, 6 1-bedroom, and how many of those were accessible?
Yeah.
And 7 accessible.
Of those
1
7?
1-bedroom, 3 2-bedroom, and 3
Oh,
3-bedroom.
okay, 7 of those 3.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions?
One here, well, Councillor Ramsey first.
No, that was my question that carried.
Maybe you just mentioned it there at the end, but I'm just wondering, will there be solar hookups and the plan for electrical heat?
Fully electric building is what
Okay.
our intent is, and we will be, hopefully, we're going to plan for a photovoltaic array, but just the planning for that at this stage,
Thank you.
to add solar.
Is that going to be hooked up to the biomass
No.
project?
Any other questions? Thanks,
Thank you very
Kevin.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments from the public? Anybody? Again, I just want to reiterate, this is your opportunity to speak, so we really want to encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. We had no written submissions, Aaron or Linda? Okay, we'll move along then to number 5 in our process here is the explanation of the process. In order to process an official planning zoning bylaw amendment, the following steps are required. The zoning bylaw amendment is read the first time and declared as read the first time at the first council meeting. That'll happen tonight. The zoning bylaw amendment is referred to the planning board for review and recommendation. So steps 1 and 2 will both take place at the same meeting, and they will take place this evening. Number 3, planning board reviews the application and prepares a recommendation to council. 4, the zoning bylaw amendment is read a second time and declared as read at a second council meeting. 5, the official plan amendment is read to be adopted by council. The resolution will either be carried or defeated by a vote of council. If the official plan amendment is adopted by council, it is sent to the Minister of Community, Land and Environment for signature, and the amendment becomes official. If the official plan amendment is defeated, the zoning bylaw amendment will be defeated as well, as the zoning amendment cannot contradict the official plan amendment. 6, the zoning bylaw amendment is read to be adopted by council. The resolution will be either carried or defeated by a vote of council. If the zoning bylaw amendment is adopted by council, it is sent to the Minister of Community, Lands and Environment for signature, and the amendment becomes official. Steps 3 to 5 take place at council's second meeting. Please note that in accordance with section 5.20 of the city zoning bylaw, any person who is dissatisfied by a decision of council in respect to the administration of this bylaw may appeal council's decision within 21 days to the Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission, IRAC. So, Your Worship, I have a couple of resolutions there that we would put forward.
Go ahead, sir.
Moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Whereas an application was received from PEI Housing Corporation for a zoning amendment for PID number 322008 from institutional 1 zone to high density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be resolved that zoning amendment 430 be hereby declared as read the first time. And Schedule B, read into the record, Your Worship, the zoning amendment 430, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under the authority vested in it by Section 18, Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPEI 1988, Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for a portion of PID number 322008 shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw is designated as high density R4 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of institutional 1 zone. And the subject property is shown on the attached map, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. You have all heard the resolution. Any questions? All in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Motion carried unanimously.
And the second resolution, Your Worship, resolution COS 21-008, moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Kerry Adams. Whereas an application was received from PEI Housing Corporation for a zoning amendment for PID number 322008 from institutional 1 zone to high density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 430, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read the first time at this council meeting. Be resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 430, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is hereby referred back to the Planning Board for review and recommendation.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Adams. Everybody heard the resolution. Any questions on the resolution? All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Carried unanimously.
You want me to keep moving on?
Keep moving on. I guess there are no lights on for questions.
Number 2 there, Your Worship. You can do that. So public meeting number 2 is a discretionary use for 33 Summer Street. The background: an application was initiated by the City of Summerside, PID number 322438. The application requires council approval to allow a solar energy collection system as a discretionary use in institutional 1 zone. The city is proposing to place 2 4-panel solar collectors on elevated steel frames. Solar energy collector system means devices designed to collect, store, and distribute solar energy within the collector system. And the map there would show where those would be located.
This is for the Armories building.
For the Armories building, yes, sir, across the street here. The application was advertised in the January 6th edition of the Guardian, and letters were mailed to property owners within 60 meters or 200 feet of the subject property. So now is the time, Your Worship, we would invite the applicant that tonight would be represented by Nick Sharkey, who's the project manager there, I believe. Welcome, Nick. And again, I would get you to, for the public record, just to state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. My name is Nick Sharkey from 153 Heron here in Summerside. I'm the president of Belcor Engineering. We're helping the city with the restoration and renovations of the Armory building. And this solar panel project is part of that project to help reduce the energy consumption of the building once it's up and running again. Lori Ellis couldn't be with us here tonight. She had a family emergency, so she asked me to step in and answer questions if anyone has any. On the document you have shows the 2 solar arrays. They'll be on the south side of the Armory building, which would be the side facing the police station. Yes, where the wheelchair ramp is, yeah.
Yeah. Any questions, Mr. Sharkey? Councillor McDougall.
Yeah, hi Nick. How high are those going to be?
The steel frames right now are minimum 9 feet above the ground, and then the solar panels will be above those.
And there's no opportunity to put those on the roof rather than put these 2 monstrosities out in front?
Yeah, so we had a look at the existing roof. The building itself is over 100 years old.
Yeah.
The roof trusses that are up there right now don't have the ability to have any extra load on them.
Yeah.
We've also looked at other possibilities of putting the solar arrays in other buildings adjacent to the property. And once again, the roof trusses just weren't strong enough to handle it.
Is there any trees that have to be removed, or are they gone?
Dorian took care of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew there was one there, but.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I'm sorry, I missed it. How high were they? 8?
The steel frames are 9 feet above ground, and then the solar panels will be above those.
Okay. We don't have a picture of them or anything like that, or?
No, not right now. No.
Okay. I just don't know what they're going to look like. So anyway, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of quick.
Certainly, Your Worship.
Will that be 4 panels on each post?
That's correct. Yeah.
So there'll be 8 panels. I'm just wondering, you say 9 feet high, and plus on top of that, are there windows in the building behind them that will be, what, cut off? I'm just
there are some windows there. I don't know the exact height of those windows, but there are also going to be some case displays inside that are going to be in front of some of these windows as well. So there's not going to be as much light blockage as we probably envision, but we'd have to get back to you on the exact height of those windows.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions, Deputy Mayor?
Yes. I guess my question would be around the heritage integrity. We're living in a community where heritage is extremely important to people, as well as the Armories fits into that legacy. And I realize that we need to be very forward-thinking when it comes to anything with energy or whatnot. But I guess I do have a question around, will that have any type of a negative impact? And I mean that respectfully. Would that have any impact on the heritage integrity of the building? And I wonder if there could or would be any drawings or pictures that council would see before a final decision would be made.
Yep. So drawings and pictures can be available. The panels themselves will be adjacent to the building, so we're not actually attaching permanently to the building. So in the future, if something ever happened, they could easily be removed, and there's no detrimental effect to the building itself. Yeah.
So then, I guess just triggering the next question then, if they're offside from the building, there probably wouldn't be any negative impact to the heritage, the historical structure of the armories.
That's correct, no, and all the wires will be going underground to the building, so there's no direct connection there. Being historical and 100 years old, there's not a whole lot of insulation in the building itself, so we're hoping that this will also help the city save long-term, reduce its carbon footprint, and also save on electricity bills.
And I certainly respect that. We need the heat. But I just wanted to make sure that the question was asked, because I know there's a very big community that has an interest in the heritage and the value, the historic value. Thanks.
Councillor Durand.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McFeely. I guess just to somewhat echo what Deputy Mayor McCormick was saying, I certainly recognize that it's a heritage property and, you know, it should be preserved as much as it can, but I think it's kind of nice to see, you know, the past kind of sharing with the future, and you know, I support it for sure. It's kind of a nice mix of things. And the fact that we aren't touching the building at all and that's still going to be preserved into the future, I think it's a really kind of a neat mix, and I like it.
Thank you.
And Councillor Durand just took the words right out of my mouth, because it's kind of between a rock and a hard place with the heritage and the moving forward, and it's kind of appealing to me as well. If we can, you know, you have the green energy and still have that beautiful building there and not cost the city of Summerside so much money to run the building. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Final question. I said that 2 or 3 times, the final one, but things keep coming to our minds, I guess. How close to the building, number one, do they have to be? I'm just thinking out loud here. With the core block downtown that hopefully will get developed this year, and if it's up 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 stories or whatever, what will be able to go on the roof of that? And the same, something is being talked about to be done with the fire hall, and we don't know yet what that's going to be or where it will be. But I'm just wondering, would it be possible to do the same thing if it doesn't have to be right beside the armories, and if the new development on Summer and Water is 5 or 6 or 7 stories or whatever, and the solar on the top of that, could this be part of it? I guess maybe I'm just thinking out loud here, but it doesn't have to be right beside the building, does it?
No, it doesn't have to be right beside, especially with City of Summerside owning the property and it's all offset. But in this case, it's going to go right back metered back into the same building, so it's all going to be in the same meter. So there's a direct connection in that way. But theoretically, it could be anywhere as long as the offset's kind of counted back to that building.
Just curiosity, say, for example, if it was located out by Credit Union Place with the other 1,500 solar panels, is it a difficult job or a costly job to wire it or whatever to get it back to the
I don't think you would wire it back. It's just an accounting function that you take into account that certain portion of solar goes to that building.
Councillor Snow.
I just wasn't quite sure what's done. What exactly do you mean by that last statement there?
As in, if you're putting the solar panels somewhere else, the city is collecting that solar power. Whether it's an accounting function of you say, okay, that so much solar power goes to the utility bill of Summer Street versus another building, it's all just an accounting function in that sense. But in this case, we're powering it directly back to the building itself. So it's all in 1 meter, so there's no accounting function at all.
Yeah, I understand that, but if it was in another location, couldn't the same thing happen without hooking it in with the other credit union, even if the...
You could. The cost of direct wiring it back to that building would be quite substantial.
Well, that's why I mentioned that at the beginning with the cost of the wiring.
Yeah.
Anything else, Your Worship?
No.
Councillor Snow.
Just sort of to jump in on what a couple others have already said. The historical factor of that building is significant, so, and I was sort of thinking along the same lines as his worship, was whether or not this building itself could hold solar panels and run to that building as opposed to sitting out. Like, it bothers me not seeing the structure itself. That's something that, and I'm glad you said that we're gonna be able to see them before we make a decision, but not being able to see them sort of makes me think, what are they gonna look like, right? And how's that gonna affect the appearance of the building itself? So, one, it's nice to be able to see them prior to making a decision, but the second one, obviously this building was renovated not too long ago, so the structure should be sound, I would think, to hold some solar panels, so.
Yeah,
if that was-
it's definitely sound, but the weight of the additional solar panels on a building of 100 years old, we didn't want to trust it, and also it would have potential for leaking, potentially in the old roof by connecting through the roof membranes.
Yeah,
So-
Nick, I'm referring to this building itself,
this
where
building, okay,
where it's
sorry.
side by side, and we have the new added-on piece. Is that something we could consider putting it, and not trying to reinvent the wheel, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking with Basil's comment, or his worship's comment about having them located somewhere else and attached, whether or not that would be a possibility if the solar panels themselves weren't pleasantly viewing.
As part of the process here is, the planning board will review it, and it would be good to have those drawings and those options vetted
Right.
as part of that planning board process, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. I know CAO Philpott has been patiently waiting to say a few words there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's only a couple of words, and I think this might have been mentioned at the outset when you introduced the request, Councillor McFeely, but just to let members of council and the general public know that this is not something that's an add-on to the budget for the project. It was something that was contemplated as part of the project all along, okay? It is included in the cost of the project, which is around $900,000. I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible that it could be higher than 9 feet to get it up at a site, or?
Yeah, it comes back to also the engineering of the structure itself. The higher we go, the more wind it's going to catch. So the beefier the structure needs to be as well. So anything's possible.
I think the options that we can look at planning board to recommend to councils. Councillor McDougall?
Yeah, and I guess I was going in that direction myself. Even just looking at the diagram there, the placement of those, if the one at the back, could that be moved in sort of 45, like diagonal, moved, separate them some, so that one is over this corner, one's over in that corner. It's just not, the way it looks right there, without seeing the picture, and I like the idea, if we can put them higher, even if you need a bigger base, I just think that when those are sitting there at 8 feet plus the things on top of it, it's just going to take away from the look of that building. So that's my concern, I think, when I had started there earlier. So I just want to make that point.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other points or comments? And before we open the floor to the public,
Just have one-
Councillor Adams.
One quick one. Now, since it's completely surrounded by streets, would there be a snow removal issue, Nick, with like snow being pushed up on them?
No, these will shed snow fairly well. You're not going to catch any more snow than what would already fall in that yard.
Carrie, and you said it would be surrounded by streets. Is this not the parking lot? They're going to be on this side of it?
So you see Summer Street's on the going north-south on the left side,
Yeah.
and then
The police station is in the lower part
Oh,
of it.
police station side. I was thinking parking lot side. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you.
Any other?
Everybody supports the solar system, there's no question about that.
Well, thank you, Nick.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. And now is the
I
time
think,
that,
Mr. Chairman, sorry, your CAO is going to lay
Yes,
on
sir.
again, I think.
I'm getting to be a bit of a pain, sorry.
oh, you're never a pain.
And just for council, just based on what I'm hearing, before this is, I guess, sanctioned by council, I guess at the next planning board meeting, or the penultimate meeting where this is ultimately approved or rejected, that council would like to see a visual representation of what these panels would look like, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McFeely, just in closing, this is something that obviously our Director of Culture and Heritage is supportive of, right? So, am I right in saying that? Like, she's seen the plan, so. It's
She's
something-
actually the lead on this.
Right,
Yeah,
right, so
yeah.
we should take some solace in thinking the head of our Culture and Heritage is in favor of it, I guess, is what, I know we have some
Yeah.
concerns with how it may jive with it, but
I
she.
think in principle, I think
Yeah.
we would all agree with it. It's just a matter of what the aesthetics would be and how we make that work. And I
But
think-
I guess that's my point. I guess she is our Director of
Yeah.
Culture and Heritage, so I guess that makes me feel a little better knowing she's
Yeah.
supportive of it. So.
And
Like with what Corey's saying, I completely agree with, she is staff and it's her recommendation, but I think I can speak for Councillor McDougall myself, and it's not been brought to our committee.
And I guess possibly that's the reason why I was asking the question, because ultimately council will have to answer questions from the general resident population. So it would be very, very good to at least see the visual of it, or the committee to have it.
Okay, thank you, folks. So the next part in the process here is that we would invite the public for any comments that they may have. If anybody has any comments or thoughts on the project, we would welcome that. I'll again ask you to state your name and who you represent and your address, please, Robert. Thank you.
My name is Robert Gallant. I'm a business owner here in Summerside. Just a quick thing, what Mayor had mentioned about the future of maybe the fire hall. One of the things that this gentleman talked about was, maybe, and Basil said it about too, about putting things on the top of the roof. Maybe, just thinking out loud while I'm listening to this, if you had the wires mounted underneath the ground, going over there, just over to the fire hall, if that's where you decide that you want to do that, and have the wires there, just so that in future, if they decide they want to build a fire hall there, those wires are there so that they could be connected to those solar panels up above a roof if you decided to do that. If you decide to put new rafters in, because I think the roof in that one's pretty well ready anyway. So with new roof, taking that into consideration so that those wires are there. It's just a little thought while I was thinking there that maybe that might be something you might be able to think about going forward, so.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. It's good, and staff would have captured that thought, and it would go to plan. Staff would have captured your thought, and when we meet with planning board, that will be recorded. So, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none. We'll move on with number 5 here, Your Worship, explanation of the process. In order to process a discretionary use, the following steps are required. Number 1, the discretionary use is read at a public meeting, and that took place this evening, step 1. Planning board reviews the application and prepares a recommendation to council. So at planning board's next meeting, we will have a discussion and hopefully be supported by the information that we asked for this evening. And number 3, the discretionary use is read to be adopted by council. The resolution will be either carried or defeated by a vote of council. Step 2 and 3 take place at council's second meeting. Please note that in accordance with section 5.20, the city zoning bylaw, any person who is dissatisfied by a decision of council in respect to the administration of this bylaw may appeal council's decision within 21 days to the Ireland Regulatory and Appeals Commission, IRAC. And that ends it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely, on that item. Okay, we'll continue on here. Public meeting number 3. I believe you still have the floor, do you, in the next one? Oh, is this one who? Oh, sorry. Councillor Drawn, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I'll likely...
Before you go to the next item, just for clear, I don't know if people are going to stay for the whole part or not, but the planning board dates for the...
Oh, yes.
Yeah. February 2nd? February 2nd?
February 2nd. Yeah.
The time? At what time?
5 o'clock? 5 o'clock, Tuesday, February 2nd would be when planning board would meet. Thank you for that, Director Aaron.
For these two previous ones, you mean?
Yes, yes.
There'll be an invitation sent out on that.
Should.
The invitation won't go to the public, though. It won't go to the public, Councillor Ramsey. It'll just go to you guys. It'll be an invite by you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Councillor Drawn. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'll introduce it, but I'll likely just hand it off to Director Aaron to kind of give us an overview of the proposal. So it's an application or the interest, I guess, to close the section between Notre Dame Street and Greenwood Drive, that little kind of section that merges from Notre Dame onto Greenwood Drive. So I'll let Director Aaron kind of describe the intent, and we'll go from there. And I do have a resolution as well.
Or even if you want to just go through the first part there, and I can take over at the number 4, if you want it. The agenda there, is it?
I actually don't have any of the paperwork, but I can read it on the screen, no problem. I just have the resolutions here. So, yeah. The street closure was advertised in the January 9th edition of The Guardian, as well as the city website and city social media. Copies of the bylaw were available to residents upon request and are also available here this evening. So we will open it up, first of all, I guess, to comments from Director Aaron McDonald of Technical Services, and then we'll invite the public to ask any questions as well.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Drawn. I'll get Linda to help me there with the slides. Again, the first item that's up is the street closure, and as Councillor Drawn said, a small portion of Notre Dame Street. The section that's on the screen there is, as you mentioned, the off-ramp, and that's the section that's being considered, and this is the graphic that will be in your package or from the notification. So we went back and looked at some aerial photography. Back in 1958, as we found a clear picture, that section of street existed then. The South Drive, as you've been along the far left, South Drive did not extend along to Water Street. All traffic went along South or Notre Dame and then went down Greenwood to Water Street. So it did not exist, and that blue arrow, as I said, just points to that little tiny section. The land and everything was there, they just did not do that lower section. So then we flip ahead to a more current aerial photography. Again, that's about 2018. Again, that blue arrow highlights the same little section that we're talking about. You can also see that probably in the 1970s, South Drive got extended down all along, as Linda's highlighting there, extended all the way down to Water Street, and then the street into Mackenzie Drive was built at that time or a little later. So again, that section remained in there at the time. There was no improvements or changes made at that time. So then we jump ahead to the next slide, and in 1990, if you look off to the messy scratches to the right are the blue lines that show the angle that that street came down and intersected with Water Street. So that's how it existed until 1990. At that time, the town realigned in red that section of that section of street to make a 90-degree intersection with Water Street. So again, you can see on the graphic to the left and how it used to come at an angle, now makes a nice 90-degree sweep intersection with Water Street. The section that's being considered at that now, no construction or correction was done at that time, just that lower or southern section.
Could I just throw something in there? I remember the summer of '71.
Okay.
That South Drive Street was there, so it must have been a year or 2 or 3 or 4 before that.
Okay.
Must have been in the '60s, before my time.
Yeah. So again, the next one then is that section that we're talking about is a small stub of a street that's a two-way. It's actually two-way traffic. It's open to two-way traffic. There's two intersections. That little stub intersects rather with two streets 30 and 40 meters away from it. When it intersects with those adjacent streets, it comes at a very poor angle, which leads to sight line issues, as well as when you try to pull out there, we're expecting vehicles. Some people don't realize that it's a two-way street. If you're heading north on Greenwood Drive, and all the cars can actually go across there and continue on. So it's a bit of an irregularity that we have. Next slide. Oh, sorry. So again, as we mentioned, there is irregularities happen a short distance away. You can see 30 and 40 meters away from that intersection. All traffic would, if this was closed, would be relocated that 30 or 40 meters to the actual existing four-way intersection that is there. Those two sections would be blocked off as shown. And again, just to recap again, the street was added, I guess we'll amend the slide and say in the late 60s or so. The southern portion of Greenwood Drive was connected in 1990. This small section of road is also coming up on our list as for on our repaving list. There is potential for abutting lands to be redeveloped in the future. And right now today we continue to plow the snow, salt it, patch it, line paint it in this section. So we're suggesting that those services would discontinue if we close the section. Again, as we stated, there's very poor existing alignment and sight lines with the two other streets where it intersects. And if that section is closed, there is an intersection a very short distance away with the proper four-way alignment. So that's the quick version of that topic that's before us for consideration. Again, it's the street closure of a small portion. We call that Notre Dame, that little section, but I think that's what's being considered tonight.
Thank you very much. And I guess just a question, I don't know if a traffic count has ever been done there, but would it be safe to say that would be a fairly low used?
Yeah, I don't, staff did go out there in the fall, I think, whenever they were looking at future projects. I don't have the numbers on hand, but we will bring it back to the Technical Services Committee in the February 2nd.
Okay, great, thank you. The reflection of my light is Councillor Adams' light. Councillor Snow?
I'm curious as to why, I guess we're here now, and how come this wasn't considered when all the realignment was already done there? Like at the end of Notre Dame, it seems we had obviously had construction crews out doing a whole bunch of realignment at the end up by Don's Bottle Exchange.
Oh, okay.
To do that, and why we're here now.
I guess it's similar to why it wasn't done in 1990. I guess they basically just targeted a certain amount of where it was either higher volume. There was a lot more volume in the lower section where they come out onto Greenwood Drive, and there was a lot more volume out where this section, this Notre Dame hit South Drive. So I think they just targeted the higher volume and busier intersections to correct first.
Okay.
Councillor McDougall, and then his worship, I think.
Thank you. Aaron, has there been any accidents there? I don't recall a whole lot of accidents there.
Well, we'll have to defer over, and I'll ask to the police chief for summary.
Just summary on it.
If there's no cars, there wouldn't be any accident.
Well, the funny part is, I came to the end of Notre Dame Street, or Greenwood Drive today, and I sat there for a few minutes. There was two cars come out of Highland Bottle Exchange and used it. There was another car came, it went straight through. But there was another car came down and used it. So there was 3 out of 4. That's probably an anomaly. But I guess my question is, this parcel of land belongs to the city right now, and will this be retained by the city? And I guess I'll ask another question while I'm doing it. So, and how is this going to be blocked off? If it's blocked off, is it just gonna be barricaded and scrubbed? Are we gonna fill it in? We're gonna grass it, or what are we gonna do?
So right now, there's a, I'm just gonna get my glasses back on. The top street of there is Notre Dame Street. There'll be a certain section of that green area that will be added to the right-of-way on Notre Dame Street to allow a shoulder and room for snow plowing. The same thing on the section of Greenwood Drive. That green triangle really is not just, it's not just this little strip. That entire green area is city land as well. It's all just one big right-of-way right now. So we'll create a proper or consistent right-of-way width on Notre Dame and Greenwood, and the remaining parcel will be appended to the lower lot, which is an existing city lot right now.
Okay, and that was one of my concerns, if we were taking part of that green island there, part of the island.
So we'll try
to
and
make sure that we can widen the street out. You know.
We'll try and bring forward a proposed future land for the Technical Services Committee meeting as well.
My other question was, if we're going to scrub that, take the asphalt off of that, are we gonna just leave it like that, or what are we doing?
So typically, I guess in red, where I kind of mark where we would block it off, in the interim, you'd use Jersey barriers with some reflective signage till the traffic pattern get used to the signage as far as the road being closed.
Yeah.
We would probably come in with with our paving contractor when we get unit pricing for milling. We would mill off full depth of all the asphalt.
Yeah.
Typically, it's a valuable commodity that we'll sell back to the contractor for sale, and then we'll just seed out the area similar to the green area to reinstate it with grass.
And just one final point. Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
One final point. We have a street, part of the street, and it's you said it's up for repaving because it's in good shape and there's no potholes on it.
Yeah.
I'm just
when we went through our own list of where for a budget list, we're saying if it gets close, we'd say we're not going to consider spending as far as that part, but it's also considering right now that the crews would either not line paint it, not patch it, not plow it, not salt it, and after we're done, of course, we wouldn't.
I guess my point being is, what's the rush? If it's in good shape and there's no accidents.
I guess I actually did go and spend it. When we consider these things, I try and drive them a few times myself.
Yeah.
Even today, I don't know, maybe you saw me, I was sitting off to the side there as well, and a couple of rigs came through, and one was a truck that came up and went to do a bottle exchange or what have you at the local. Another was a service rig that came up and turned left there, and they meant to continue on in South Drive, and they turned down Notre Dame, come out on the new part that we realigned,
Yeah.
and one was a car that committed there and back, out of the ones that I saw.
Yeah.
But again, staff did go down and in the fall, so it's not like a winter time, we can get a busier time to provide back the actual counts, and we'll provide those for you and ask as part of the report for Tech Services.
Okay, thank you.
Any ditches to infill
Oh,
No, it's the only part.
yeah. So I was kind of wondering about the same thing Councillor Snow was wondering, is when that top of Notre Dame was completed, why wasn't that? But I understand one step at a time. I get that. In all fairness, I know that now that the top of Notre Dame is finished, that cars are not going to come in from St. Elner's, turn left, go down that road and come back out and go right. So that road that we're planning on closing, I would assume the only people that are going to use that short road that we're planning on or thinking about closing, or whatever what's on the agenda, would be the folks that there's a number of houses in that area. If they're going downtown, they'll probably cut across there.
Yeah.
For Don's Bottle Exchange or any business in there, they might cut across. So I understand the people that might use that. The other thing that I think is it's 120 feet if we made the intersection down, if we did closing and go down, it may even eliminate some of the traffic that's going on Greenwood, the extension of Greenwood. They'd either keep going straight or they'll turn, but it's certainly not going to cause any more traffic on Greenwood Drive going towards Sunny's.
Yeah, and that's
It's either going to eliminate it a little or, yeah. that, because I'm just trying to be reasonable,
Yep.
and with the city, the cost to the city with the plowing and the salting and the looking after that short street. That's kind of what I'm looking at, and anyway, I just wanted to put
Okay.
that out there. I don't know if it made any sense, but it makes sense to me. Okay.
Just one other clarification. Before 1995, this would have belonged to the province. So it would have been kept by province. So the town of Summerside did the bottom end in 1990, so I don't know if it was ever on the books for the province to do anything with it either.
So, just most of my questions, I think, were answered or asked by Councillor McDougall. But just for clarity then, so the plan would be that that island in the middle would be used to improve the intersection, some of that space?
Some of the land could be used if you needed
Yeah.
to do future improvements.
So
Yeah.
is that a separate PID number?
No, actually, what shows up is all that asphalt plus that green shows up as right-of-way now.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't show up as a separate pit at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so,
We have engaged a surveyor to come up with a plan if we had to subdivide it, so that may be, that's all which shows in our records now at least, yeah.
so if there are no more questions from council, I guess we'll move it over, and if there's any questions or comments or concerns from the public, we'll welcome that now. And as before, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the minutes.
Name's Barry Ford, 539 Sheen Street. Good evening, council and mayor. I'm just wondering, I think Linda said it was provincial land before 95. Or up to 95, then the city took over it in 95. So that's, what, 15, 20 years that the city's owned it? And it's just now that they've thought about closing that little lane? I'm just wondering why. And does this have anything to do with the development on Hippenstalls Corner? And if it does, does the city or the city staff have plans, like actual drawings for Hippenstalls Corner?
So I'll go one at a time. I guess, as we mentioned, we rate every section of street in Summerside every fall for consideration for budget time. This had been on the staff's radar as far as improper intersection alignments. We've done a number of them over the years throughout the city, and this one here was on our list as far as capital improvements projected for this year or the next year. It didn't make sense to suggest doing capital improvements in a street that staff would feel should be closed when we have an intersection 120 feet away and 100 feet in the other direction. And that's an area that was identified for consideration for instead of actually spending money on it, to actually save money and not actually have that section of street. Prior to I'm not sure if I recall all your questions, but as Linda stated, those areas outside of the city and the other jurisdictions, the roadways and stuff were maintained and operated by the province. The town just operated and maintained the right-of-ways within the town. And after the city amalgamated in 1995, the city took over some of those responsibilities, and more so in 1997, I believe, whenever they took over the responsibility of streets, drainage, and those and roads and what have you. I don't know if that answers all your questions or not, but.
Oh, well, it seems to me just a bit convenient that as soon as Hippenstalls Corner comes up, it's on the drawings from Hippenstalls Corner, that this corner is to be integrated into it. And now, all of a sudden, has nothing to do with that. It just, that it's more cost-effective to close the street than to look after.
And I guess one other question to this, I haven't seen any other plans for Hippenstalls Corner since the last item was brought before for rezoning.
So there is none.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I haven't been seen or submitted to the city any plans other than what was presented at the rezoning for a development of that property.
And So you're saying there isn't any plans?
No. I have no idea whether developer, 1, 2, or 3 different developers might have options or considerations for developing on the property of land. I'm saying our department and I have not been submitted any plans from a developer for a development on that property since the rezoning.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Campbell.
If we were approached by SRDC, would they have owned that part? Is the land went to them first before, or was?
I think if you go back, it used to be the old town. If you go back on some of the old drawings, it used to be the old town, that it went to SRDC, and then I think whatever that proper phrase, when SRDC dissolved itself of its properties, that became the city's property, but I don't know if that answers your question, Councilor.
Just sort of curious, Barry's comment there made me think, and then you mentioned earlier, those are 2 separate PIDs, or we own the right of way?
No,
What did you say earlier?
I said everything that showed on the mapping that we had was everything that's asphalt that you can see on there, as well as that green triangle,
Yeah.
was all considered right-of-way, did not have a separate PID. None of the road right-of-ways that I'm aware of have a separate PID, they're just city road right-of-ways.
So as a right of way, regardless of what happens moving forward with the property being developed, that wouldn't be part of that development anyway unless there was some sort of change to it?
Yeah,
Or am I wrong in saying that?
It could be appended to an abutting property, or it could be kept in the city's name as far as, we've asked a surveyor, again, we're going by provincial mapping that just comes on.
Yeah.
We've asked for a surveyor just to consider if it was to be subdivided off, and as part of the process, we'd have to close off on the deed, or on a deed and register to show that that's not a street. So we will have to make a survey plan. So we've asked a surveyor to start the search there again, to Councillor Campbell's question, who owned it, what was the exact limits of the land?
As Barry asked though, if this is closed off and there is a development put on that large piece of property, will that be is that what you were asking, Barry? Is that your question?
If you look on the drawings from Hipstall's Corner, the
Just want to come back up so they
concept
can hear you, just so they can all hear you. Yeah.
if you look on the conceptual drawings for Hipstall's Corner,
Yeah.
the fire building is on the asphalt.
It's on the asphalt.
I'm pretty sure it is. If it ain't, it's awful darn close.
Is that, I mean, I guess, is that accurate, Aaron? Do you know?
Whenever developments comes in, we'll have to verify where it is and what infrastructure's in place, if it's in setbacks from various boundaries as well as existing. I know there's a sewer line goes right up there because we put it in the last 5 years, so there's no building up on that top corner unless it's on top of a new sewer line that went in.
Oh.
The sewer line went in when that box culvert went in for the pond.
Okay.
It was in your last presentation. All you gotta do is look at the drawing. It's right there. One there, and one across Flyer Street. 2 6-story buildings, one at the end, and that's why that has to be joined onto this land, to get that building in there, according to the conceptual drawings. That's why I asked if you had actual drawings.
Conceptual drawings are that. The plans, whenever a development goes to happen on that property, will be submitted to ensure that they comply with setbacks.
Just seems a bit convenient to me that now is the time to close that street.
Well, right now, where Linda is showing on her cursor, if we zoomed in here, I guess I'll add it to the plan. We'll add on the existing infrastructure that is in the area and show that to you as at the tech service.
That would be good.
I guess my point, if I can make it, or a question, Aaron, the area that's considered right-of-way has not got a PID number, right?
Sorry, I was making it up.
Right. So if we were to add, if we took it all off that we needed for the new design to widen out the street, whatever's left over, if it was going to be appended to that parcel, wouldn't we have to have a rezoning?
No.
Why not?
We'll verify that for you and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, I just figured that if anybody's going to append any parcel of land to anything, don't we have to go to a public meeting or a rezoning? Anyway, that's just a question. Thank you.
I just have a question there, Mr. Chairman. I didn't see any other lights on. I don't want to jump ahead. Just to follow up on what Aaron said there, I guess over the last number of years, intersections have been changed a lot. I know there's a lot of discussion this last 2 or 3 years or longer, go back how many years, on Central and Pope. Something has to be done there to straighten that out, and council's working on that. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, Water Street and by Tim Hortons there, and they had to change that intersection to make it safe. Greenwood and Pope this summer, there was work done there to make turnoffs and that sort of thing. And then Notre Dame and South, as was mentioned earlier. And I remember a few years ago too, Water Street and McEwen Road, there was a turnoff put there a number of years ago to improve that intersection. And Lover Shore Road, I'm just thinking of some over the years that had to be widened to make it safer. And just to follow up too, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the right-of-way that somebody mentioned here, is that right-of-way there because of the water and sewer that's underneath? What's the right-of-way? Was it?
The right-of-way that's there, as I showed back from 1958, that's just where the traffic, that's as far south as the traffic went. It came down South Drive, went along this section, and then merged onto Water Street. That was all, that was the farthest south road, unless you went to the dirt road down the treatment plant, the Seaweed Road, but that was just for construction down that area at that time.
Are there water and sewer pipes along there someplace? Did you just say?
I will show you that on when we go to the tech services, but
So
yes, I just know that we had to adjust it because in order to get the box culvert that went under the stream there, in order to get it to its lower elevation, we had to lower the sewer main, which did a new one from halfway up Greenwood Drive. There's a spot there, and a new one had to cut across the brown part of this field here, cut across the road, so we can show you that was only done in the last 3 years.
Thank you.
Okay, so just one further question. The boundary of a right-of-way, which would be, the southern edge of that road plus a few inches or a couple feet, do the setbacks on any new or any development have to comply the same way as they would had that been a lot? Like, do they still have to be so many feet from
The
a
setbacks
right-of-way?
are determined from the right-of-way. The setbacks are determined from the boundary line or a boundary edge, and in this case, the boundary edge is a street right-of-way.
Okay, so if we were to receive a permit application and they did in fact have a footprint of a building beyond that setback, that wouldn't be allowed?
Correct, yeah. Unless there's other processes that you have, the variance,
Okay.
if it's within a certain distance, or yeah.
So whatever may be, I guess, conceptual at this point, if it does in fact show where it does in the concept, that's not allowed?
Correct. The bigger issue would have been, there's a very expensive sewer line that's underneath it that's going to have to be relocated, and it would have been like that.
Okay, so does that clarify at all? It's simply not allowed unless, we were to amend our own bylaw, yeah.
Okay, that's, like I say, we'll show it to you that.
Yeah, so many feet.
And it's still, not only can't go past it, there's a certain distance you have to stay away from it to allow you to dig it up in the future. Typically, if there's other pipes that go across the southern limit of these properties that they're going to have to incorporate easements on to show that here's where the existing pipes are, and you have to stay a certain distance away from the edge of the pipe in order to allow maintenance in the future to allow you to dig safely.
Right, okay, so that answers Mr. Ford's question.
So just to add to that too, Councillor Ramsey, I'm just wondering, you say that if it's not allowed by the city, but the city could make it allow, I guess I'm kind of confused on that part of it.
What you're talking, the building setback, Mr. Mayor?
But if your councillors decided to move the sewer line somewhat, then is it allowed?
But even your variances that you're allowed, you're supposed to be 10 feet away. There's only a maximum allowable variance of 50. You can't go down to 0. It's only, you can only provide a variance of a small amount, even if you desired to. You can only go down to 50%.
Thank you.
That makes sense. And the city's not going to spend a bunch of
Okay, so if, can we put the agenda back on the screen there so I can? Perfect. The one time I don't bring paperwork. It's the time I gotta read a bunch of stuff. So now we will provide an explanation of the process. So in order to process a street closure bylaw, the following steps are required. Step 1, the street closure bylaw is read and formally approved at a public meeting, which is what is taking place this evening. Step 2, Technical Services Committee reviews the street closure bylaw and prepares a recommendation to council. Step 3, the street closure bylaw is read a second time and formally approved and adopted by council. The bylaw will either be carried or defeated by vote of council.
What date in that one?
Steps 2 and 3 take place at council's next meeting, which would be
February 2nd will be the committee meeting, and this will
meeting.
be on the technical services.
Just for the
And-
information to the public and the people here.
Sure.
February 2nd
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
at 5.
Planning board's at 5. I'm not, all the committees are that night. Planning board's at 5. The rest, I'm not sure. They just nailed down planning board, other than the others fit in.
And should it go beyond the committee meeting, it'll be at the February regular council meeting for a final
Correct.
reading, which would be
The
the
16th,
15th.
the 16th, the day after
16th.
Islander Day, I think they.
It's a Tuesday because of the holiday, okay. Resolution, I guess, at this point, COS 21-009. This will be the first reading of bylaw CS 33 to be referred to the Technical Services Committee meeting. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Snow. Whereas CS 33, Greenwood Drive and Notre Dame Intersection Road closure bylaw was presented at the council meeting on January 25th, 2021. Be it resolved that CS 33, Greenwood Drive and Notre Dame Intersection Road closure bylaw be declared read and formally approved a first time and be referred to the Technical Services Committee for review and recommendation. And the bylaw CS 33 and Schedule A is attached to any of those handouts tonight and also the package.
Moved by Councillor Duran and seconded by Councillor Snow. Councillor Snow, you had a
Just a
question?
comment, this is just so we can move ahead, so we can get some of those further questions answered at tech services.
So is this the planning board vote?
Technical
It's
Services.
full council, right? Right. Any further questions? Pardon? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Carried. So just so the information, the public is clear, this is just the first vote. Just to come back again, everybody understands the date, the time, and the procedure here.
And the Technical Services Committee will vote that first meeting in February to take it to council for the final reading.
Correct.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Do we have another item on the agenda?
Yes, we do, Your Worship. Public meeting number 4, another street closure bylaw discussion, vote, resolution. It is for First Street, or section of First Street between Summer and Central Street. The background is the City of Summerside is proposing to close a portion of First Street, approximately 1/3 of the block, located between Central Street and Summer Street. The portion proposed to be closed is located nearest Summer Street. And the street closure was advertised in the January 9th edition of The Guardian, the city website, and city social media. Copies of the bylaw were available to residents upon request and are available here this evening. Comments and questions. So the applicant is invited to make comments at this time, and I'll invite Aaron McDonald, Director of Technical Services.
Thank you, Councillor John. I guess this is similar to the previous item. We have a small section of a street that's a request or consideration for closure. Again, as stated in the image that's there, this is a portion of First Street between Summer and Central, and that's the graphic that is there. This here request originated from a developer in the past year looking to redevelop the highlighted building areas. Through the course of doing their redevelopment plans, They made the request for consideration to close a section of First Street in order to expand the building footprint or the entire developable area. So if we go to that's the 2018 current image, the highlighted area in red is the section of the street that is to be considered in order for them to expand the buildable area or buildable footprint. So right now, that's the east-west flow of streets in the city. First Street is not one continuous street all the way through. This is a section in between that is offset from the two other sections. Approximately, I think it's 17 and 20 meters. There are streets directly to the south of it, Water Street, and just above it, Fitzroy Street, that are more continuous east-west streets. And those streets are more than capable to handle the, I'll say the strictly east-west flow, not to the individual locations. I think we got. So that there is like an intended concept to say that the red footprint would be an area that's shows what full development could happen. The section that's highlighted in black there would be the section that would be closed. Currently, that street is a one-way street. That's the only section of First Street that is one-way, although it's 2 lanes. A turnaround circle would be created, and that section would be turned into 2-way traffic. So that this concept would still allow then access to all the existing parcels on First Street. So again, just it's brief.
Do you want to just go back to that other map?
Sure.
Just for another second there.
There's shadows on the imagery there, so it's a little bit, but go ahead.
Does this parcel of land that's highlighted in red go a little farther north than that?
No, right now the parcel stops right where Linda's showing there.
Yes.
That's the limit of the land now.
Right.
The street width right there is what the original request was to consider, so that the entire red area would be considered a developable area.
What about north of that red area? I thought that was sort of in the mix too.
That's what it could be added in the future to say it's one, but in order to allow anything like that, you have a street in the middle. So this allows at least this street to be connected to this block. And again, we had some preliminary concepts. We haven't received a plan in place, but again, we had numerous ones over the last year. But part of that request was to go larger than the existing footprint that existed. So in order for that to happen, this small section of First Street would have to be closed. The city also owns the lot just to the south, so it allows room to put that turnaround on city right-of-way and allow for vehicular accesses to be turned around. We did as the notice said, we did provide notice in the paper with the other street closure. We also send out individual letters to the 4 property owners that are directly abutting this street now that have accesses to say this is what's actually happening there, and they'll still have access on this new, it's the same street, but it'd be marked and changed to 2-way traffic like the other sections were over the last couple of years.
I like the idea of it being a 2-way now.
So again, just to summarize, again, a developer had requested partial closure to allow the extending the building footprint and the entire developable area. As I mentioned, the sections of First Street do not align all the way east and west. They are offset about 18 meters or 60 feet. This section now is a one-way flow of traffic in the westbound direction. There is, as we mentioned, potential development on abutting lands. This will make the section 2-way traffic with a turnaround as part of this concept. The abutting streets are in close proximity, will allow for the alternative traffic flows. And as we mentioned, the streets directly above and below can handle the additional traffic volumes. Now, any of you have any questions? That concludes.
I'm just wondering if you've had any comments from people, businesses around that immediate area with any of their comments, pro or con.
I had just the Island EMS that had asked us a few questions. We answered their questions. They were intending on coming. They answered the questions, heard the answers to their questions, and they were satisfied with those answers. And, yeah.
Island EMS, it's only a one-way now, so they would still have the ability to go that one way.
Their response time out would be in the same direction they're going now, would just be when they return, they would have to come off of Central Street.
Right.
Councillor Snow?
Just curious, we've talked about possible development, but without a development agreement in place, are we, just for question's sake, are we putting the cart before the horse, or should we wait to see, are we closing off a road that might not need to be closed down in the future, or?
Yeah, I guess this process is probably a minimum of 2-month process to go through to close a street. From the time you put the ad in the paper, allow your days, go to your 6 to 8 weeks. In order to put forward if you come for a proposal and say, what's your building area you're going to build? Is it just that piece, or what's the entire piece for someone to come forward with a proposal, or a development?
Could we not all make that jive regardless, like?
It would then come in with a development, but that would be conditional upon this closure happening. Right.
Yeah. I guess that's my point, if
we can still execute and approve it, we don't actually have to physically do the work.
Right.
Until you
And
get
then-
it, right.
Okay.
But you'd have your process done, where you have your process to allow for it to happen, and you don't have to actually do the transfer or closure work until you have a development in front of you.
Then we'd have to reverse the process if we had to at some point.
Yeah, it's still gonna be in your name.
Yeah.
As far as the city name is.
Would it be budget reasons too? Time of the year?
Well, one is going to be time of the year to actually do the work, and budget reasons is that we did apply for funding from the previous one is actually no cost, where you'd actually be just closing it off and actually taking the benefit of the full milling. This one here, you'd have to realign some services, and there was an application 2 years ago to infrastructure to realign the infrastructure, so there is funding to do the actual work. Correct. This construction season. So I mean, now would allow it to happen we're in 2021. It could happen in the summer or construction season of 2021 if a development comes along that you want to do it.
I guess my question is sort of the same as Councillor Snow's. If we don't have an approved development, I'd hate to see this street closed off and no development take place for a couple of years or something like that. So I have, not a whole lot of objection on closing the street if it's, as long as it's for the right reason. I'd hate to see it approved and we go ahead and close it off and our developments don't go ahead for a year or so. So anyway, just my thought.
That'll be in your guys' control to approve the tenders or projects to go ahead and proceed when you're still in control of when the work gets done.
So it can be reversed back, is what you're saying? If we did proceed one way or the other, it can be changed back?
If council chose to approve
Yes.
the street closure, the actual closure and realignment of the infrastructure doesn't have to happen until.
And I do remember a few years back, what you just mentioned, that there was some interest, but that was, I think, one of the questions people were wondering about that street, if that was something that they were looking at as far as a development or whatever, so I think
One of
that's
the
what you were
previous
meaning.
developers had brought forward their plans to show this was the footprint they had.
Yes.
They were trying to make the numbers work in order to get the building to fit the square footage. They were constrained within the limits of that area. That's when the request came forward to extend their perimeter.
And I think just making a point on it around economic development ideas, with the core block, I believe some of the discussion around council chambers was it was really hard for potential developers to see what that parcel of land or that core block could look like. But once the completion of the renovation was done, that created interest in it because people could see the potential. And I'm just wondering if that's, partially this idea with changing the one-way street into two-way traffic and a cutoff, if it has something to do with that.
The intent was to bring forward the latest proposal that we had so that the streets and the entire footprint could match that. Whether that gets built or something else is to be seen.
And that was my question. If the footprint that's there now, if we have a developer come forward and the footprints that is there now is sufficient for that developer, then we don't have to go ahead and do anything.
Yes, you would just, you would have approved through this process if you went that way. But
Right.
you wouldn't have to actually close it and change the infrastructure.
That's what I mean. It could be approved. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be done if the footprint that is there now is acceptable for what, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So unless we have a development, I'll call it a proposal, before the end of the season, then doing this would more or less be on our own dime and not, the funding that.
Well, no, the infrastructure component, the realignment could still be done at your cost share. It's not necessarily with the development. Your question would be, are you doing it, as Councillor McDougall said, are you doing it prior to having a development formalized and firm without having that commitment in place?
Okay.
So you're gonna make that decision come August, like we still have time to actually do the actual infrastructure work or what have you.
Okay. So if we're kind of approaching the end of the funding window and nothing has kind of come to light, we're
Both
still.
construction window and the
Yeah.
funding window and the ability to get it constructed.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question, and maybe, I'm not sure on this one here if the people, an opportunity for the public to comment on it or not. We have two business owners with us tonight. One gentleman spoke on the other, Mr. Gallant, and we have the other Mr. Gallant here too, HMS Office Supplies and Michael's Pizza, and their businesses, entrances are in that general area. Is there an opportunity for them to speak if they want?
Of course, yeah. Oh, that's the second part of
And maybe they heard everything.
this agenda,
the
yeah.
next,
So that's
next
B,
item.
that's 4B.
Oh.
4A,
Oh,
I
sorry.
guess, is us.
Oh,
and
sorry, I guess, sorry, I didn't, I'm jumping ahead.
So, I guess with that being said, it looks like 4B is
4B.
ready to go.
4B or 4B?
This will be 4B, Part I.
Keep this on, or, Pierre Galland, I guess, for the record, I own HMS, so I will be affected by this change. I guess, first of all, I want to applaud you guys for going ahead with the change of the buildings. I will share a little story with you. I worked late one night, and you'd know all about that, but when I left work, it was 10:30, and there was a block of cement that fell from the Purple Parrot building about the size of this podium. So it was a huge safety, because that could have fell on somebody's head. So those buildings needed to come down. It was great to see that and progress from the city, so that's fantastic. My only concern is with the street. I don't have a problem with it, but I did actually talk to Mike Thuska. I was hesitant to sign our lease because it was up for renewal, and I said, well, geez, how's this going to affect? Keep into consideration, some days we'll have 3 tractor trailers backing into that parking lot. There is a lot of traffic. I know there's changes happening with the drive-through credit union, so those things all need to be considered as far as traffic flow. I know that if traffic's going in for the drive-through, that will change, and there's tractor trailers trying to back in, like there's issues there to work around. I don't care if we have to use the other side of the parking lot, like between the proposed development or whatever, but they need to get in there, and some days there are quite a few, so. Yeah. I don't know if I have anything else to add, but.
Do you see a concern there? And that's, like.
Yeah,
You do?
I do. They have a hard enough time backing in as it is. Like, it's a really tight spot for them to get in there using the one way, because they shift and use the 2 lanes when they back in, and we're always concerned, like, don't block the ambulance off if they have to go. But now, with this new street, with the cul-de-sac, it's probably easier for them to back in, to be honest, but there's also going to be traffic coming in, wanting to turn into the credit union or whatever, and there's things like that to be considered of.
Right, so don't put any decorations in the center of the cul-de-sac.
No, it looks like you'll take out the island that's in the parking lot behind us, which is fantastic, but there is still, we get a lot of trucks in there, so there is a flow there that we need to be careful of.
Your points are heard, and again, the concept is showing that as a turnaround. They haven't done the design to say, here's where the road will look, here's the actual diameter. They haven't finalized that. They just want to show that, yes, there will be a turnaround area. And
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood that there is a lot of big trucks that come in there, and we have to watch out for traffics and all that. So.
And we're hopeful that at least their interaction will only be with people that are going to that site, not people that are just cutting from one street to the other,
Yeah.
like they could be now. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
4B, number 2.
Joanne, number 2.
Again, Robert Gallant, I own Michael's, and I will somewhat be affected by the street closure. It's not, for start off with, I want to also applaud you for tearing down those buildings. That was, I never thought I'd see it. I honestly didn't. But this is the council that did it, and I'm thankful for that. So I applaud you all, because it took a long time. It takes a long time to get it done, and I know there's a lot of work that has to be done to get it done. So I appreciate that. The street closure at the end, I don't have a problem with it, none whatsoever. If the developer, and your wording says that, the developer requests, am I correct in that saying what the word says? The developer requests to have that street closed off. So there is a developer that's requesting that in order to make probably submit to you fellows to be able to do this, and he has to get this done in order for this request to work. So I don't have a problem with it whatsoever, and I think to get that development, that's to be. You tore down those buildings, you want to get something up there, you want to get the tax base, you need the money, you need to do all, you need to get that tax base and get it up there as quick as you can so you can start spending the money on other stuff that you need to do. It's very important that you get that tax base. Basil's told me for years and years, you know, you got to get development, you got to get stuff building because we got to get that tax base up in order to keep our taxes low, keep our rates low. So I got no problem whatsoever with it, with the street closure, as long as this development goes. If it does not go, I'd just assume keep it open as long as we can to keep that flow of traffic running as best that we can. I just don't want to see it to be closed for no reason whatsoever. So, but anyway, I think you're doing a great job on this section here, so my kudos to you.
Thanks, Robert.
Could you put a word in with the Prime Minister, maybe to get some of the funding? Next time he calls you, maybe just mention it.
Congratulations on your call with the Prime Minister there. Great.
All right, my script is back on the screen. So if there's no more questions or comments from council or the floor. Oh, please, okay.
Mike, and this is my wife Lynn Nicholson. We both live in the area, Queen Street. The whole process seems very confusing to me. A few questions, if they could be answered, would be appreciated. So it sounds like the city is the applicant to close this street, not the developer. Is that correct?
Yes, the city owns the right-of-way. Sorry, the city owns the right-of-way, yeah.
The city is applying to close the street, not the developer. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. City owns the land from the former buildings that were torn down, is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Who is the developer that has put in proposals for this property?
Do we know?
Is it top secret? Does nobody in this room know?
Well, I guess for me, it'd be, I'm not privy to it, but regardless of, as the council has stated, a previous developer has suggested that their site required to be larger. This area would be part of the overall plan, and if it's not required for a development, the council's desire is that it not be closed if it's not needed for a development.
Does anybody in the council know who the developer is?
Well, right now, we don't have a developer.
No.
Okay, I'm just asking a simple yes or no.
Yes, so right now, we don't have one. If we
Okay.
do, we'd have a plan.
The only thing I just add to that, Mike, I just want to make sure we're clear, there was a proposal, number one.
Well, who made that then? Could you
Pardon?
tell that?
Well, some John Q. Public out there, I'm not going to give a person's name out. They just made a request, and then there was another person stopped me, a developer, and said, I'm glad to see this taking place. He said, I'd be very interested in the development, so.
I'm very glad to see it taking place too, although my wife owned the former building.
Yeah.
It's obvious that things weren't gonna
weren't gonna go forward.
weren't going to go for it. We're glad to see it, but I don't understand the secrecy around all this.
I don't think there's secrecy, Michael, is we don't have a signed development agreement with any developer, so it would be,
So
it
we
would,
spent so you spent basically $1 million to get this thing going. So
It
it's
would
being
be-
pushed forward to have some developers approach to have this piece of land looked after
It
and
would be-
get it developed?
all I'm saying is, I think it would be premature to, name what potential developers may be when things aren't finalized yet, that's all.
Okay, so you are meeting with potential developers, or you're seeking more potential developers for this piece of property?
There's been ongoing negotiations,
Okay.
since day one with, yeah, but there's no signed development agreement yet, so it would,
Okay, so this should-
in my view anyways, it would be premature to be,
Okay, so by having this street, this is the next step in getting this person to sign on the dotted line to pay for the land and all that kind of stuff and put the process forward?
I'm not, and I'm speaking as one counselor, you know, I don't believe one's necessarily tied to the other, you know?
Okay.
I think what it does is it gives potential developers an option if they want to utilize that piece of land.
But you must have
if they
taken,
don't in
must have
advance,
purchased the buildings and tore them down with the thought that there's going to be somebody come forward and develop the properties.
Certainly,
The property,
yeah,
as it
yeah,
is now.
yeah.
Okay.
If I may,
So the next step here is a development agreement that hasn't been,
So you're not just putting all your hopes on
Hasn't been
one developer, you're
no.
seeking others? Good? Yeah.
and if I may just add a comment to both of you, that the city took the initiative to see the buildings demolished because the residents and the business people were complaining about the look of the properties.
We agree with that
We
totally.
agree.
And
Wholeheartedly.
definitely, and economic development, one of the key things that the city and council has to really take into consideration, we have to have the land project development ready for shovels in the ground. You couldn't do it the way it looked. So that was a very, very big factor in making it developable. That's not the right word, but to have it ready for development. So there's no secrecy, and I think for anybody that is a business owner or has been involved with any kind of a business plan previously, they don't want their information or ideas out on the street until there is a development agreement in place, and that is what the city, through Councillor McFeely, is talking about, like with negotiations. There's all kinds of meetings, but until there is a development agreement, we're in that stage where nothing can be said or done until that comes to fruition.
Well, this is great, because you're telling the people of the city that we are in negotiations and we are doing something, which is a positive thing, because before, when we've had projects with the downtown, it's been very difficult, and it's been 10 years from one project to the next, so we want to know that you're keeping this project in the forefront and you're moving forward.
I think we can assure you that you know,
I've been assured before.
No, I
as you may
know, but I don't think there's any,
On
No.
other projects? Yeah.
but I don't think,
And other projects being
you know,
done.
I think council is, you know, nobody wants to get some kind of a formal announcement there more than us. And, but I think the other point that should be made is, you know, the reason why the city needed to acquire the land is that we could qualify for municipal infrastructure money to do the underground stuff that's there. Private developers would not qualify for that money, and without that piece of work being done, future projects aren't feasible. You know, if the private developer had to do the infrastructure work, the numbers just wouldn't work for them. So this allows us to access funding, which we did, from other forms of government to do the municipal infrastructure work. And then, you know, the plan was always to turn it back over to sell it back to a developer to develop the property, private enterprise to do that piece, not the city.
So what you're saying is the city is going to put a proposal to the public for almost like an open tender where several people could propose a development for that property?
No, that's not what I said at all.
No, that's what I'm asking.
You know,
is the city going to put some kind of a advertisement in the paper to say that we are looking for submissions of proposed developments for this piece of land in downtown Summerside?
That,
That was already done.
yeah, that was
You guys
done
already did that.
a long time ago, yeah.
That was done about 3 or 4
Yeah.
years ago, and this developer, if you will, was one of
So,
the chosen.
Seems like a lot of people know the developer, anyway.
Anyway.
Is there any plans, drawings of the plans for that property?
That would be up to the
I
developer.
haven't seen any recent ones, I've seen.
But there have been some?
I just want to say, in all fairness, though, if someone came and wanted to do business, like if you guys came and wanted to do business with us, I wouldn't be a very good counselor if I said, oh, you know, Lynn and her husband are, that wouldn't be fair until you signed, you know, any work that you might want to do with the city. Does that make, like, that's the way I'd want to do business anyway, you know?
But we just want to know you're working on it.
Oh, my gosh, Lynn, yes. Well, I'm telling you, we are.
I think,
That and a number of other projects.
I think if I can say something, because history has a way of teaching some very valuable lessons. And I remember on the corner of Central and Notre Dame, just adjacently across from St. Paul's Church, there was a very large development for condominiums, an application. There was public meetings, there was a lot of things held. And the developers at the time, a lot of their drawings, a lot of their very private business information got out there. And that information then was appealed and went to IRAC. If you look at that corner today, which is a prime corner, because at that time as a council and former councils behind tried to bring business downtown because we were losing our post office, co-op, a number of things. That business didn't happen. It went to IRAC. That corner and that lot is now vacant because all of that information got out there, and the developers spent close to $1 million defending their application. So that's why council, we have to be so careful that we can't breach those kinds of things. But believe you me, from every council member here and mayor, we are working very hard because we probably want to see that happen more than anybody, to have the business and the residents downtown. So we are trying very hard as council.
I'd like to just add to this too, to follow up on what Lynn and Mike said there earlier. You know, the cost to get it so far, but I asked Finance and our CAO, Rob and Kristen, a number of months ago, our council did, to give us a dollar estimate of what the city lost on tax base because of the building's been vacant for so long. And it was close to $1 million that we lost. So if it was to sit for another 5 years, so there's a chance here to get it developed, as well as get people living downtown. The proposal hopefully will be commercial on the first floor and apartments from there up, whatever height is. We need people, and when you have people, you'll attract business. So that's all in the mix. And we know the one uptown made the news for I don't know how many years, but finally we got something tied together there that's going to happen. But it takes so long sometimes. And like I said, some of these buildings were vacant for, I think one of them was 12 years.
Nobody knows better than me.
I know, I know.
Buildings were vacant, let me tell you.
So it's complicated to get it all tied together, especially when we have 4 or 5 buildings and the infrastructure underneath and the street. And like Councillor McFeely said, we met with the federal government, you know, and other orders of government to see how other funding is available. So it's quite a project to get tied together, but at the end of the day, you know,
So when you get a developer that comes forward with their plan or whatever, is there going to be like an open meeting to see what they're going to develop as far as the
that's what we did uptown too. Once it's signed.
And Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong here, but any development proposed for that corner would require the approval of Heritage Planning Board, which is a public meeting?
Public, yes, they have to review it, yes.
Yeah.
Heritage?
Like, we really wanted to keep your frontage. We were really trying hard. You know, we had someone come look at it. You know, because that was important to us, Lynn. Your dad and.
It's all about moving forward.
It's all about moving forward.
To move forward.
But it's nice to keep that footprint, is what I'm saying. Of, you know, like we tried hard to do that, Lynn. I want you to know that. We had them in here. We talked to them. They went to the building. They did some investigating, and you know.
I have no issues with the building being torn down.
Yeah.
It's all about progress.
Well, and for us too.
It's a community to live in.
Yeah.
And this is the progress.
Yeah,
But we
and-
want to know that it's moving forward, that it's not just sitting still, because we've done that on a lot of projects in this community, and it's not, it needs to go, it needs to move.
Well, I don't think it's moved any further in, like, ever, as it did in the last 6 months,
Good.
right?
Can I-
Like, the
just-
buildings are
Ask the
down.
question.
The buildings are down, and,
Can I just
yeah.
say something here? I really understand where you guys are coming from, and I can really tell how passionate you are about it, but I think the worst thing in this community that we suffer from sometimes is a hangover from past mistakes or deficits that maybe didn't get over the finish line. And I think you just said you want us to proceed and progress as a city, and I think we need to get past all the past, whatever it is, and look forward and positive, right? Because I understand what you're saying, and I get some of that negativity coming from you from past stuff that maybe didn't go forward. So I just want you to know that we are, to everybody's point here, we are trying to move it fast forward as quick as possible, and I really believe that's what's going to happen. So I just really wanted to tell you that, because I feel
Clarity
what
is
you're
a
just
good thing,
saying.
too.
What's that?
Clarity is a good thing.
Very-
Transparency is a good thing.
110%, I agree. But to their points earlier, we need to make sure that we protect developers to a certain extent, so we have future developers wanting to do business with us too. So it's a catch-22 that way, but I guarantee we are pushing ahead with that.
So, can anybody submit a plan for this property, or is it too late? Has a developer been chosen, I guess? Should I ask that question?
Not at this point, to my knowledge.
Nope.
I think, to follow up on what you're just saying there, what Corey is saying and others, that, is there somebody going to speak there, sorry? No. This council is unanimous to do exactly what you're saying, moving forward. We're unanimous with the building uptown that's been created so much discussion. The council is unanimous for this development. Council is unanimous for the Central and Pope. Something has to be done. Oh, good. So, and there's a lot of big projects, and the same with the big development down on the waterfront there. So, things are happening, but sometimes it takes a long time. But this council wants to move ahead and make things happen. We need the tax base, we need the jobs, and we need the people.
But I think, Mayor Stewart, in all due respect, I think what Mike is asking is this open for developers to put an offer in? And my understanding is that we're in negotiations right now. CAO, Rob, is that fair to say? And that was open, that question did go out there. We had someone come to us. We're working on that particular, with those people, that firm. If it doesn't work out, then it will be reopened for negotiation again with other developers. But as it stands right now, we're in negotiations with a developer. Is that correct?
I think
Rob,
the
is that
door's
the
still
best
open.
way to describe it so that for clarity?
Yeah, but there's nothing final at this point.
Nothing
It's just a
final,
concept.
right? So,
So the door is still open.
yeah. Okay, does that help, Mike?
It clears up a lot of things, yeah.
Okay, I just.
Summerside is a small city, whether
Yeah.
you know with that or not, but rumors get around, and names get dropped, and
And you can't believe
it's
half the
nice
lies.
to hear, no, it's nice to hear from councillors what their opinion is of certain projects.
You can't believe half the lies you hear.
Yeah. Mike and Lynn, I want to thank you for your interest. The last council had this project. We had done a lot of work on it, and the numbers just wouldn't come together, and then it fell off the rails. And I commend this council. And everything has got to fall in place. You know, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and I got to thank Mike Thethusca and city staff and the Aarons of the world for making things happen. And everything is falling into place with this. Nobody was going to be able to construct anything down there. They were not going to make the dollars work if they had to tear those buildings down, and just the cost of it. They would have been better off spending their money somewhere else. But we all stuck together around here, and this is one of our priorities, and it's right up there. So, Appreciate that.
And we have a great working relationship with the other two orders of government, the provincial government and our federal government, and we've had numbers of meetings, many meetings with those other two orders of government on these projects and others. That's as far as the name
Project
of
coming
it
to
go.
fruition.
Pardon?
So we look forward to this project coming to fruition.
So are we.
Us too.
Thank you for being here. And thanks for your presentation.
So I guess just to add on what a couple others have said, it's certainly my hope that what we've achieved to date can kind of serve as some sort of, assurance that we do intend to keep making those kinds of decisions and changes and that we want to keep doing things like that. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to number 5.
You mean we're just getting going?
That's what I was going to say. So in order to, this is the explanation of the process. So in order to process a street closure bylaw, the following steps are required. Number 1, the street closure bylaw is read and formally approved at a public meeting, which is taking place this evening. Step 2, the Technical Services Committee will review the street closure bylaw and prepare a recommendation to council. In step 3, the street closure bylaw is read a second time and formally approved and adopted by council. The bylaw will either be carried or defeated by vote of council, and those 2 steps will take place at, same as the last one, our next committee meeting. We'll vote to take it to the monthly council meeting in February. So the resolution attached to this is Resolution COS 21-010, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Corey Snow. Whereas CS 34, portion of First Street between Summer and Central Street, road closure bylaw was presented at the special council meeting on January 25th, 2021. Be it resolved that CS 34, portion of First Street between Summer and Central Street, road closure bylaw be declared read and formally approved a first time and be referred to the Technical Services Committee for review and recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Duran. Sorry.
No. And just wanted to note that bylaw CS 34 and Schedule A are attached to the packages this evening.
Thank you.
February 2nd as well.
Moved by Councillor
Same
Duran.
meetings as the first one, yeah.
Councillor Duran and seconded by Councillor Snow. Any questions on the resolution? All in favour say aye. Contrary nay. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Councillor Duran. Do you have anything further to add at this time?
I do not, Your Worship, other than Brian Harlock might want to get some fresh copies. I spilled water all over my desk.
Okay. Okay. Well, I believe we've gotten to the end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Ramsey and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. All in favour? Thank you very much. I believe we're still on YouTube, are we, Brian? He's going to unhook us here in a second.